The 98th Academy Awards, we're breaking it down. This is the FilmGamer Podcast, Season 6, Episode 2, Number 65 overall. And in this episode, we will be breaking down the most recent Academy Awards, which happened last night. We will have the box office report, of course, and the Letterboxd Diary. Let's get to it. I look forward to the Academy Awards every year, and I usually predict without equal. This year I got 17 categories correct, and the Discord that I was sharing the experience with, although I did see most of it with my family, the nearest person I think got 14, maybe. But every year that I kind of join an Oscar pool, I usually cream everybody, so that was fun. But this year, I just, as we will see, if you just simply go with the betting odds and relax from there, you can have a pretty comfortable night. The night went okay to pretty good. Rather smooth ceremony that was only dogged by technical issues of tinny sound and some bizarre cuts where they would cut to a camera that wouldn't be prepared, on Leo or something like that. But overall, it was a largely predictable affair. One battle after another won 6 Oscars, including Best Picture, which it was favored to win. It also won Best Director, Paul Thomas Anderson. Best Adapted Screenplay, which it was also favored to win. And I'll just go through all of the awards, but I'll start at the top, just going through how every major movie did. Begonia, which is about 2 guys who kidnap a girl who they believe is an alien trying to take over the world, got nothing. 0 for 4 out of its 4 Academy Award nominations. F1, which was a movie that was funded by Apple, distributed by Warner Brothers to huge success, got 1 Academy Award for Best Sound, which it was expected to win. Netflix's presentation of Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein won 3 Academy Awards, all of which it was expected to win in the craft categories: Best Costumes, Best Makeup, and Best Production Design. And then you had Hamnet, which was all night, all along expected to win Best Actress, and that's exactly what happened. I'll have to look back and see if Jessie Buckley thanked Steven Spielberg. She did thank her producers and her director, and they cut to the director with Spielberg behind her, but it was just, part of the night's awkward ceremony, really. Um, but Focus Features distributed Hamnet, and it's a Universal picture, and Steven Spielberg is a big part of Universal. He has a big Universal movie coming out in June, Disclosure Day, a UFO movie, and he has a lot of sway at that studio ever since he made, both Jaws in the 70s and Jurassic Park in the 90s there. They pay him about like 20 million every year as a part of his contract for Universal Studios rides. But anyways, I digress. He was a producer on Hamnet and was laser focused the entire campaign because, yes, winning Oscars is a bit of a campaign these days. You go to luncheons, you go to screenings, you shake hands with potential voters, and they're starstruck. And a lot of times people can lose an Academy Award just because they are, despite their performance, so incredibly unliked. And I might get to that a bit later with the Sean Penn win, as he won Best Supporting Actor and wasn't present. But I wonder if he was just simply asked not to be and happy not to be on the awards circuit for this film. They just kind of kept him away to avoid him saying anything that might be deemed controversial. And they just, had the rest of the cast and crew led by Paul Thomas Anderson and Leo, do a whole bunch of stuff. But anyways, Hamnet in Universal were laser focused on the one award they could win, which they got, in Jessie Buckley. What does that really have to do with Spielberg? And why I brought him up was because Spielberg had directed Daniel Day-Lewis to Best Actor. He directed Mark Rylance to Best Supporting Actor. with Bridge of Spies. He directed Ariana DeBose to Best Supporting Actress for West Side Story, and so the one that he hasn't done is Best Actress, although he tried to get close with Michelle Williams. Um, so this is sort of him doing it by proxy. He is listed as a producer on Hamnet, so that, extends his lead as the most nominated producer in history. And he's got about 18 nominations from 15 films he's directed himself, and only one win for Schindler's List. But moving on, Marty Supreme got 8 nominations and no wins. One Battle After Another got about 11 to 13 nominations, but it picked up 6 wins. It's the biggest winner of the night. No movie since they moved from Best Picture 5 to Best Picture 10 has won more than Slumdog Millionaire's 8 or 9 awards. I'm not sure. I think I'll look that up right here. Because that was the Dark Knight year, where Dark Knight wasn't nominated. Everybody threw a fit, including me, realizing the Oscars aren't so great. And it won 8 out of its 10 awards, and no film has beaten that number since. Anyways, so you have, if I can go back, Academy Awards, and then let me go to, I'll just search 98th because I want to get this up. I did have it here, but I can never make up my mind on which tabs I want open because, who can follow where my mind goes? Not even me. Moving on. One Battle After Another won Best Picture, which included Paul Thomas Anderson. It won Best Director, which included Paul Thomas Anderson. It won Best Adapted Screenplay, which included Paul Thomas Anderson. Again, another trend where the screenplay awards are just basically a consolation prize for directors. For original screenplay, it's gone to a director for about like a decade now. It's very annoying to me as a screenwriter because Paul Thomas Anderson, to me, leans more as a director than a screenwriter. I know to a certain degree he may have always been that, or Boogie Nights is more of a written film than directed film. There are some directors like Quentin Tarantino that write their screenplays and just film them, and it kind of feels that way, and a few editing tricks and stuff. But I find every major creator and filmmaker always leans more towards being a writer or more towards being a director. Shyamalan, more of a director. Spielberg, obviously more of a director, although he has written some screenplays, and this summer's movie is based on a story of his. But moving on, Marty Supreme got nothing. Timothée Chalamet was favored to win, didn't, and neither did Leonardo DiCaprio, who was my pick that I wanted to win. Also worth noting, One Battle After Another won Best Editing, which is deserved because it's a well-edited and well-paced movie. And then the other wins that it had were, if I can go down here or just think, let me see, the major 3, and then it won for editing. Why can't I think of this? Oh yeah, supporting actor, of course, Sean Penn. It kind of is funny how this year went for supporting actor, because everybody immediately talked about how gross and evil Sean Penn's character was in One Battle After Another, that they didn't even want to award him. So earlier on in the season, because now there's like 10 million award shows, Benicio del Toro started picking up awards because people like him. And then what happened was Stellan Skarsgård in Sentimental Value decided to campaign in, or put forth a nomination for Best Supporting Actor. Even though it's clearly a lead role. Sentimental Value is a film about a director who wants to make a film that he wants his daughter to star in, and how it relates to his life. It's very clearly a lead role that they campaigned as supporting, which has kind of been a trend that's happened for a number of years. So it was widely expected that he was the favorite. But as the season progressed, it just seemed almost undeniable that Sean Penn would win, especially after the Screen Actors Guild voted for him. And it's these types of wins are always impressive because there are some people who just are so good that people don't want to do any press for them, and they don't have to. Anthony Hopkins was similar both times that he won. Um, Obviously, Heath Ledger was dead, so he couldn't, campaign or anything. But a lot of times, the work is so strong it speaks for itself. So you just had, Jacob Elordi, who's young, picks up his first nomination. Frankenstein, a role that Andrew Garfield turned down. He's along for the ride. And then Delroy Lindo was somebody who he appears with a TikToker who doesn't really know who he is and only knows him from his previous role in The Five Bloods. And he kind of speaks to Delroy Lindo idiotically as like a newcomer, which gathers a whole bunch of support for Delroy Lindo because he's embarrassed by a friggin' TikToker of all people. And then um, another key part of Sinner's campaign is that at every award show, they are always together. Everybody is there supporting everybody. So everybody's talking about everybody's role and bouncing off of everything. And at the BAFTAs, the Tourette's guy in the movie I Swear, which is, the big British film, drops the N word, which they don't edit out as kind of a way to very perversely raise awareness for their British film. And so uh, what happens is they leave it in the broadcast, shockingly, and it's left to embarrass the Sinners crowd. And Sinners had picked up a win there for supporting actress, which indicated it had like widespread support, even support overseas. And then when the SAG Awards came around, it was a shock that Michael B. Jordan won Best Actor, and it lined up for him to win Best Actor, and I was kind of surprised. I spoke about this with my brother, and my brother was just kind of like, it's a dynamic role. It's well defined. The way that I see it was just kind of like, we all like Michael B. Jordan. He's a super charismatic guy. Um, Leonardo DiCaprio wasn't really willing to come down from the hill and, campaign and shake hands and do that kind of thing. He's an old fashioned, like, let the work speak for themselves kind of thing. The movie is the star, which is like the key bit of a restraint, which makes him a good actor. And Timothy Chalamet went the other way and was just going hard for it and openly about, like, I want to win, I want this. And so Timothy Chalamet was favored as Marty Supreme. Now, one of the things he said, a few days ago after voting had closed was he said that, oh my gosh, ballet and, you know, um, that kind of thing. I don't want to be an actor and have to like beg people to see my movie. And he's like, I don't want to be like ballet or opera. And he said, no offense to those, kind of like in a full offense way. And it blew up. And I just kind of think of, if I were Timothy Chalamet, the positive thing that I would think about that is like, you just said something that the whole world, your whole acting world, responded to. Everybody had an opinion on, which means that everybody kind of listened to what you said. Now, they didn't hear you or hear your point exactly, and they kind of took it in bad faith because they want to humble you as like, a young actor or something like that. So that sucks. And now he's like 0 for 4 because he also produced Marty Supreme. But it's good to have on your resume like another notch of winning. I still feel it was too early for him, although he would have been a fine winner. If Marty Supreme were a better movie, it would have been an easy lock. But it seems like there was a bit of overlap between him and Leo. Ethan Hawke, I mean, Blue Moon, like, I got 10 minutes into that movie, couldn't stand it. The Secret Agent, it's a movie I didn't end up seeing. I had the option to at TIFF, and I decided not to, um, simply because I heard mixed things about it, and I still hear mixed things. Perhaps I'll see it someday. It's the same with I'm Still Here, I think it's called, the Brazilian film from last year. Apologies for not being able to remember it, but anyways, Wagner Moura gets a nomination, and it's like that nomination is the win. A lot of people are just getting points on the board. Michael B. Jordan winning is just as he said in his speech, he talks about following in the footsteps of Sidney Poitier, Denzel Washington, Halle Berry, um, and Will Smith, even, which I like how he shouted that out, even though it's like unpopular. And he enforced Whitaker, of course. And he said, a lot of times people win and it's seen as a promise, and I understand that you picked me for this because you want me to do well and do better. And I take that. It was just like a nice, humble way of saying it. I am so surprised that, to me, it was the biggest surprise of the night, even though he won the Screen Actors Guild, where actors vote for themselves, and of course, actors make up the biggest clump of the acting branch. Why wouldn't they? Um, to me, it's kind of surprising because at no point in Sinners did I walk away from that movie and being like, oh, Michael B. Jordan was so good. I figured that he would get nominated just because it's a very good movie as a whole, and he's not bad in it. But I kind of thought of him as like the fifth slot. Although, I also didn't think Ethan Hawke in Blue Moon would be like the fifth slot there. But, because that movie sucked. But, Michael B. Jordan kind of, as Leo wasn't willing to come down from the mountain and promote, and Timothée Chalamet was promoting too hard, and Wagner Moura was kind of, the odd choice of like the Brazilian branch of the Academy, who have like dedicated fan bases and stuff like that, but a movie that didn't, it's like sort of a hit but doesn't completely cross over. Um, it's, sort of like that. Um, it was kind of like along with Sentimental Value, the foreign film. This is a slot that if Stellan Skarsgård had run, he could have easily won. But they're like, oh, I want the easy win, I'll go supporting. And every time people do that and they kind of choose the wrong um, category to go for, it's usually a mistake. You could counter that and say with Chase Infinity that like she should have done supporting actress or something like that. That I disagree with. Lead actress was the right role for her to do. It's just they couldn't get into it. So yeah, good speech by Michael B. And best actress Jessie Buckley. We all knew who was gonna win. Rose Byrne was the second closest, but my God, I watched that movie yesterday, and it was just as torturous as I thought it would be when it opened at TIFF, and I'm like, I don't want to see this, it's too depressing, I gotta make time for it. So when I had time yesterday, I watched it, and it was just as depressing as I thought it would be. So yeah, Michael B. is the king of actors who is like, he sees his lane, he sees his move, the door opens, and he takes it. I'll give you a quick anecdote about that. Was that on Fruitvale Station, the movie that Ryan Coogler was making out of film school, he has to go during production, which he's not exactly allowed to do, and take a meeting for Sylvester Stallone and Winkler, I believe, for the next Rocky movie, which he had pitched before he had even made Fruitvale Station. And Michael B. stops him on the way and is like, where are you going? And he's like, well, I can't really say, it's a secret. And he kind of, because they're good friends, fesses it out of him, and he's like, okay, I'm going to do a meeting for the Rocky movie. And he knows, he's like, oh, you're going, eh? And he's like, yeah, are you going to stop me? And he's like, I'll let you go if I can be in it. And he goes, okay. And so, as Paul Thomas Anderson said when Coogler told that story, it's like, or maybe it was Spielberg, he said he saw his opening right there and he took it, I'll let you go if I can be in it. And, yeah, this is a good win for Michael B. Jordan, and it's just, everybody likes the guy, he's also already sexiest man alive, formally, and so he wins an Oscar before he's 40. Um, yeah, that's good for him. I don't know. Is it the best performance? No, but the guy is so likable and humble and didn't do anything wrong that, in addition to being in a good movie, um, it's hard to complain much more, especially since it was primed by him winning the SAG. I think had he not won the SAG and he had surprisingly won, people would have been like, oh, but yeah, no surprises in actor, actress, picture, or director. Um, Supporting actor I talked about with Sean Penn. Supporting actress, you had Sentimental Value, which I imagine split the votes. Um, Sinners. The interesting thing that reveals about Sinners in One Battle After Another is number one, those supporting actress roles aren't super strong. So I think Amy Madigan came in and was just super well defined. The more you can represent your movie as like the face of your movie and like an important pillar of your movie's success, the better it is. And as Weapons kind of went away, people remembered that movie, but what they remembered was, the finale, which Conan O'Brien kind of mocked in the opening, with the evil witch being chased after the kids. And you think about it, it's like, yeah, that's what we remember from that. So, as a representation of that film's success, and I think it was important for Warner Brothers to have that too. Um, that is what stuck around. So you had, uh, you know, funny enough, altogether those three movies by Warner Brothers, Sinners, which was a huge risk for them if that flopped. The heads of the studio, Michael DeLuca and Pamela Abdi, who greenlit that and a bunch of other films, would have been out of the job because Mickey 17 had bombed. Um, the Alto Knights had bombed. Both of those cost over $100 million in losses for the studio back to back. And then um, Sinners was coming out, and people were very broadly, the CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, David Zaslav, was very broadly like, okay, maybe I need to start looking at other options for people to run this studio. And then Sinners came out, and Minecraft came out, Final Destination 6 came out, and then they distributed F1, and that was a hit. And then Weapons came out, that was a hit. The Conjuring came out, that was a hit. Like a bigger hit than all the previous Conjurings, too, might I add. And One Battle came out as just kind of the crowning achievement on that, and it cost 140 million and made 70 domestic, 200 million worldwide, so it did not make its money back in theaters. And so the only thing to kind of justify that is an awards win, and it ended up competing against Sinners, and it won the big time. It won Best Picture, and it's like that's what you take a risk on a movie for. You're like, I see this Paul Thomas Anderson guy. No movie that he's made has ever really made any money in theaters. It's like kind of a commercially challenging stuff, but still, accessible. You have Leonardo DiCaprio, who's one of the few stars who could get a film like this made. You have Sean Penn being evil, which he's very good at doing. Let's bet on this filmmaker. And it was like, oh, they spent a ridiculous amount of money, and Tiana Taylor is in it, and who's she? She's been in a few stuff. She's been in music videos and stuff. Like, what is this? And if anything, it was just a bet on the filmmaker moment that paid off, and that's why I'm really glad, because if Sinners had won, to me, it would have sent the message that a movie has to be a big hit and be good in order to be worth making. And One Battle kind of just says it just has to be good. And to me, that's like the purest form of art there is, in this business. Like, the movie still made money. Um, it wasn't a flop. Like, it was enough not to make it a flop, but it is only really the kind of movie that gets justified its $140 million spend with, extras, sets, filming in California. Who knows where all the money went elsewhere, but it only gets justified by winning awards. In this case, it won the big ones: Best Picture, Director, and Screenplay, and along with Supporting Actor, uh, Editing, and if I can remember the last one, Supporting Actor, Editing, think Will. What else could it have won? Casting, yeah, which was an inaugural award. Really good because that, Stephen Lockjaw, Sean Penn perfectly cast, Benicio del Toro very well cast, Finding Chase Infinity definitely worthy of an award. So it's all very worth it. And then, Teyana Taylor versus Marty Supreme, which had a lot of stunt casting, which is, you have somebody like Kevin O'Leary in it who's like, oh, that's perfect, but he's just kind of like himself. He doesn't actually add much to it. Like it's like you could have inserted a film clip of him from Shark Tank and it would have had the same effect. Like he actually doesn't have much screen presence, and he's not like a very interesting villain. There's no psychology there. Um, so it kind of surprised me watching Marty Supreme, which I watched for the first time. Um, and that reminds me, did I include that uh, in my profile here in my diary under recent activity? Okay, guys, I go to recent activity and then I go to all, and it doesn't show up. These are just recent reviews. When the heck did I review Night of the Hunter? That's from like a year ago. Man, Letterboxd is off the chain here. Do. Yeah, I reviewed Mary Supreme. I gave it 3.5 stars. So, anyway, um, moving on down the lane, you had Golden from K-pop Demon Hunters, the only speech of the night which was cut off, which was very painful because I was kind of with the, you know, actor talking or the songwriter talking about, why this one was important to them, and they let like, a couple other people go on extra long. Kumail Nanjiani had a funny joke about because there was a tie for best short film, it ended up taking twice as long as all the other speeches, which was pretty funny. Um, uh, the other funny joke was when Kumail Nanjiani was introduced. He's like, "Please welcome a guy with the body of a Marvel superhero and a guy with the voice of a Marvel comics collector." And he's like, "I can't even argue with that." Um, yeah. You have international feature film. The past couple years, this has been the richest category because every single country is just picking their best film. Spain had Surat. Tunisia had The Voice of Hind Rajab, which was a movie at TIFF that people were talking about, but people also say at TIFF, like, oh, The Life of Chuck is great, and then you watch The Life of Chuck and it sucks, you know? So I always try and avoid that. Sentimental Value one, to me, that was the number three behind um, One Battle and um, Sinners. So it winning, made sense. In these past couple years, we've had a few Palme d'Or winners where it's clearly the best film and gonna go all the way. Last year you also had the Cannes winners that won the Palme and runner-up prizes, similar to Sentimental Value, which I won, I think, for acting. Um, you had, can I go in here? Let me see, because I'm trying to think if I can find it in here. They never, yeah, there it is. Um, it won the Grand Prix, which I guess is that listed as the runner-up prize, second most prestigious award after the Palme d'Or. Okay, yeah, because the Zone of Interest won that the other 2 years ago. Um, so yeah, um, going back, I gave Sentimental Value 4 stars, and again I'll go through that once I finish with this quick Oscars rundown. Film editing again, Andy Jurgensen won. I was surprised because Andy Jurgensen seemed like younger. For whatever reason, I expected an older person to win Best Editing for a movie like One Battle After Another, which is about like parents and parental fears. Um, Looking at what this guy had edited, he had done Paul Thomas Anderson's previous movie, Licorice Pizza, uh, and he graduated way back 20 years ago, um, and he was an assistant editor on Inherent Vice and an associate on Phantom Thread, and then the primary editor. So Steven Spielberg did this with switching from Michael Kahn to Sarah Brashar, um, where it's like you have your veteran is getting older, they take on an apprentice. The craft categories are very good at doing that, of making sure there's a smooth transition. And sometimes you have to do a hard transition, like you know, Christopher Nolan having to switch from Hans Zimmer. He did some of Hans's like best music, and worked with him, on up until Dunkirk. And then what happens is, uh, he gets called to do Dune, and you can't work with Hans Zimmer anymore. So what do? Oh, Hans recommends Ludwig Göransson. So he works with Christopher Nolan and wins, and he wins for um, uh, Oppenheimer, of course. Um, I'm trying to think what he won first for, because he has three. He won for Oppenheimer. He won for Sinners, and he won for Black Panther. So yeah, this is the second time he's won with Ryan Coogler, actually, which is pretty impressive. So they share custody, and he'll be back next year with scoring the Odyssey. Um, so yeah, um, but yeah, Andy Jurgensen, good on you, pal. And it was a nice surprise that he's gay. It's like one of those things. Oh, I wonder if that contributed to, LGBTQ minority oppression, that kind of thing. Because, you're fighting white supremacists in one battle after another. So, yeah. Um, I thought it was interesting how, and very telling, some people who I was watching on the Discord with were disappointed that, Paul Thomas Anderson didn't make more of a statement of just saying, I'm a filmmaker, not a politician. I like the work speak for itself. To me, that's very telling of the values of one battle after another, of like handing over the dirty work to the next generation. However, at the same time, many people in that Discord that I'm with are like younger than Paul Thomas Anderson was when he made Boogie Nights. Like, they were born much after that movie. So I don't know if it's, maybe they just don't appreciate somebody like working to get their Oscars, and then 2 weeks before, like, just ruin it by saying like a political comment that's not going to change the world. His movie will have more of an impact on him than he ever will. So I do appreciate that, and I don't exactly think it's a cop out. Maybe he could have said something a bit more clever, but you know, fundamentally, a movie that's like $140 million movie, like One Battle After Another, can only go so far. In fact, there are rumors that it might have even cost uh, like 175 million. Um, yeah. Um, I'm trying to think here if there is any mention. Yeah. Despite an 11-minute standing ovation. Yeah. They say, okay, Paul Thomas Anderson's One Battle After Another, starring another Warner Brother tentpole starring Leonardo DiCaprio, is bypassing Venice and isn't expected to appear at Telluride. So they skipped the festival circuit, which I do think was a good idea because they wanted to market it as a popular movie. The film's large budget, Warner Brothers claims 130 million, while some reports have costs hitting as high as 175 million. They avoided festivals entirely rather than risk the critical scrutiny that might dampen its commercial prospects. Their box office first approach is evident in what must be the most surreal partnership announcement in modern cinema history, a collaboration between PTA's latest opus and the online video game Fortnite. As you guys know, I documented that well and played that level, which sucked, by the way, at least on Xbox One. Um, Moving on. Sound F1, obvious winner. Probably should have picked the category where sound is like instrumental in the story. Like Sinners would have been fine. One Battle does have good sound, but that's not true to it. Frankenstein again would be a solid winner, but Seurat's sound drives the story. It's about people who move to music. It's about a guy looking for his daughter traveling across a desert. That's a very interesting soundscape for a movie. Would have been a perfect winner. Instead, they go the one with race cars. Vroom, You guys know how I feel about F1 at this point, so I don't have to say it more. It's the most expensive 6 out of 10 movie ever, but moving on. Yeah, Sinners. Ludwig Göransson might win 4 Oscars, if you're generous with the Odyssey, before he is, 43, which, on the way to being the next John Williams. Then you have Best Documentary Feature, Mr. Nobody Against Putin. which is about a teacher and event organizer at a small primary school in a Russian town. Um, and after the invasion of Ukraine, he becomes like a whistleblower. Um, anyways, this is like the third um, kind of Putin documentary to have won. I don't think it's making a huge difference, guys, but you know, um, maybe Sean Penn, uh, who is a prominent speaker that people listen to, would have made a bigger difference saying something. But he, in the meantime, is literally in the Ukraine, I guess. So all eyes on him. Um, you know, I'm pro Ukraine. Um, Best documentary short, All the Empty Rooms. Haven't heard of it. Maybe I'll watch it later. Um, I'm glad that The Perfect Neighbor didn't win, even though that's the only documentary I saw. Had a lot of hype, and it's just an assemblage of body cam footage. My mother had mentioned the Alabama Solution, which is about a bunch of crooks in an Alabama prison that are given cell phones to record the conditions in which they are forced to live and the torture that they get. Very fascinating stuff. I'll have to catch that afterwards. Um, Visual effects, I mean, this was Avatar in a walk. Everybody knew that Avatar was going to win. It's not even close. What's frustrating to me is that, like, F1 special effects are like, whatever. Jurassic World Rebirth's effects could have been really great, but I don't know if they knew that Avatar was coming that year or something, or it was just their shortened schedule. It wasn't super, um, impressive as Gareth Edwards' previous movies. And then The Lost Bus had well-directed special effects by Paul Greengrass, but they were very, like, cartoonish. And then, of course, you have Sinners, which, again, solid visuals, but yeah. Production design, Frankenstein is going to win. I won't spend time on that. Although I will say, you have Fiona Crombie for Hamnet, Jack Fisk for Marty Supreme, um, Hannah Beachler for Sinners, and I'll just say Florencia Martin for One Battle After Another. These are all people who are, like, very good at what they do. So any winner in this category probably would have been fine. Um, I would have leaned towards Marty Supreme on this one and Jack Fisk, but again, Frankenstein wins. The worlds that Guillermo del Toro once again creates are much more fascinating than, the stories he decides to tell them in. Original screenplay, I already mentioned briefly. Robert Capwell is the only one who's, like, not the director um, doing the screenplay. I will say for It Was Just an Accident, it does have the best screenplay of all the nominees. Although, sentimental value, hey, that would have been something. Adapted screenplay, in my opinion, sucked this year. Um, Begonia is a remake. Frankenstein has been remade a million times. Hamnet rearranges the novel in a very boring way. Paul Thomas Anderson very clearly killed it. And then Train Dreams is like a super spread out movie, but isn't really about anything. And then you have Best Live Action Short. There's a tie. The last one happened like 16 years ago or 14 years ago, in 2010. You have The Singers, which, like, is the only short that I saw. But I saw it, I'm like, this sucks. But I don't know, I guess it's cool that I saw it before. It's just about a bunch of guys in a bar, shot in, I think, 4:3, heavy grain. And it's just about, you know, people start singing. And one guy goes, and then another guy goes, and then another guy goes. But, cool that they won. And then two people exchanging saliva. Hey, I guess that's an LGBTQ movie or something, but I'm sure it's worth watching. Like, it can't be worse than that kind of time cop black person shooting one. Two Identical Strangers, I think it's called, which is like one of the worst winners. The Oscars don't always get it right, but I'll watch it and maybe they will. Best casting, I mentioned One Battle After Another. Makeup, yeah, Frankenstein wins. Everybody knew. Ugly Stepsister is probably the only one of these where it's just kind of like a movie that's not part of the typical group. A trend that people have complained about over the past couple of years, as the Academy has grown to 10 Best Picture nominees, is that they basically pick the 10 Best Picture nominees and then coalesce the rest of the nominees around that instead of picking movies like The Ugly Stepsister, where it's like one nomination for this other different movie, but people really appreciated the work of it. Um, this movie is just a twisted take on the Cinderella story and follows Elvira as she battles to compete with her insanely beautiful stepsister in a fairy tale kingdom where beauty is brutal business. Elvira will go to any lengths to catch the prince's eye. It's the gory tale of blood, sweat, grit, and gold that goes into making Elvira the belle of the ball. Um, yeah, it's probably a more traditional, grim fairy tale adaptation of Cinderella, which is cool. Um, does it mention? It doesn't, because Rotten Tomatoes is terrible at it. Um, but Norwegian stuff. I'll have to see it. Getting rid of that. Getting rid of that. And then, you get down to costume design, where it would have been cool if Avatar won. It's cool enough that it got nominated, but yeah, Frankenstein wins again. Support for the crafts. Nobody does it better supporting those, you know, um, below the line. For those who don't know, it's like you have the popular categories of actors, directors, producers, screenwriters, and then you have everybody else. Those are the crafts. So, Guillermo del Toro is very good at like making sure those people get their due, and that's why Frankenstein wins, because he treats those people so well. And I'm very happy because he employs a lot of Canadian people and was given the key to Toronto and the city. Just swallowing some water there. Yeah, animated short, The Girl Who Cried Pearls. I'm sure it's great. Animated feature, K-pop Demon Hunters, the movie that should have replaced F1 for Best Picture, in my opinion. Um, how? I've never checked the Rotten Tomatoes rating until now. 91%, 99% popcorn meter. A movie, if that had gotten nominated, I think that would have moved the needle more towards Netflix releasing its movies in theaters, because it released at the box office months after it was released on video, and um, it uh, did well. It was number one, released again, made more money, and then is also getting a DVD release. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. Yeah, and then lastly, you have Best Actress in a Supporting Role. I mentioned Amy Madigan, and cinematography, Sinners. This one makes history because it is the first female cinematographer ever to win in her category, which is cool. And even cooler is she mentions her predecessor, Rachel Morrison, who's the first woman to get nominated. Both of those people were under Ryan Coogler, and it's like Ryan Coogler, um, worked with Rachel Morrison, and then had, um, Rachel Morrison get nominated for Black Panther, and then, Rachel Morrison went on to direct and did a movie which was like The Fire Inside, which was totally fine, written by Barry Jenkins. And, the movie's just kind of like whatever. And what ended up happening was she went on, she directed, and then he kind of upgraded a bit his visuals, if I do say so myself. Well, Rachel Morrison was actually nominated for Mudbound, if directed by Dee Reese, if I'm being specific. But anyways, Morrison goes off, and then he gets Autumn uh, Arkpaw. Is it gonna show her name here if I find it? Yeah, Autumn Durald Arkapaw, which is a Filipino African American Creole woman. So it's cool, 46-year-old woman. I guess women, it's been said, were like intimidated because people see cinematography as a very physical thing. You have to carry the camera. When you look at somebody like who's the guy, Hoyt Van Hoytema, who's like a big Swedish guy who like physically can put IMAX cameras on his shoulders, and you think, oh, well, I can't do that. Thankfully, there are camera stands and stuff like that. So hopefully, this win by Arkpa will, win. Because by the way, she's also married to another cinematographer. Funny enough. Um, what's weird is that he's listed on like feature fiction. That's a weird way to set it up. Yeah, but anyways, um, moving on. That was the Oscars. So again, just taking stock of everything. Uh, you have what the heck is this? What am I even looking at? Yeah. So you have One Battle After Another winning 6 Oscars, Sinners winning 4, Frankenstein winning 3, and K-pop Demon Hunters winning 2. And yeah, uh, everyone else winning 1. Overall, decent awards. I'd give it like a B or a B minus. It wasn't particularly funny. It didn't have any winning or inspiring bit. Not as good as last year, but still fine. And feels like a new turnover. So without further ado, let me get to the box office. So I haven't. My last entry was actually, I think, at the beginning of February. So, getting on to that, Hoppers is number 1 at the box office. This is a Pixar film. It did pretty well. It didn't drop very low. It opened to about 45 million and only dropped 37%. Pixar movies always hang around a long time, and this one will play all month until Super Mario Brothers movie comes along, which I'm glad. It kind of lights the fire of that, because we had Goat last month as well, which is that still hanging around the top 10. Yes, it's at number 5 and 90 million. So, you have that, you have Hoppers, and then you have Super Mario. So hopefully the children's train will continue, because it's weird. It's like there used to be a constant supply of kids movies, and now because of like animation and crunch, it feels like it's only every 3 months. But yeah, you have number 2, Reminders of Him, the Colleen Hoover adaptation. 18 million, decent haul. The previous Colleen Hoover adaptation, The Best of You, I want to find out if, bear with me here. How long before she comes up? Colleen Hoover, she's the 3rd result under Colleen Hanabusa and Colleen Ballinger on Wikipedia. Anyways, of course, she's best known for It Ends With Us, Slammed, Hopeless, yeah, film and television adaptations. Regretting You is the one that I couldn't remember. Oh, there was a 7-part miniseries called Confess. Was it any good? Premiered in 2017. No information on it. Yeah, okay. Well, it's kind of like The Dark Places for Gillian Flynn. Maybe someday it'll get re-adapted. But Reminders of Him, I think, is the best reviewed of her 3, between It Ends With Us and Regretting You. And good cast, because I like this actor who's in it, Tyreek Withers. He was on Atlanta. He was in I Know What You Did Last Summer. Yeah, that's cool. Anyway, Reminders of Him, and then I can get rid of that, and then I can also get rid of that. Alrighty. Oh, and I just wanted to rank of the Best Picture nominees I've seen. Number 1 is One Battle After Another. Number 2 is Sentimental Value. Number 3 is Sinners. Number 4 is Train Dreams. Number 5 is Begonia. Number 6 is Frankenstein. Number 7 is Hamnet. Number 8 is F1. And I don't have Marty Supreme in there, which is a problem, because I would have put it, I guess, in between Train Dreams and Begonia at number 5. Why is this not here? You see, I'm back at home on on my major desktop here. M-A, is it going to come up here? Nope. Ma comes up first. M-A-R, M-A-R-T, yes. Then Marty Supreme comes up on Letterboxd. Okay. So I add that in there. It's weird. I mean, I did like it, but I didn't hate Begonia. I was neutral on Begonia. I didn't love Marty Supreme, but yeah. And I gave Train Dreams 4 stars, so there it is. Train Dreams, again, screensaver movie. So, yeah, looking at the list then, it's One Battle, then Sentimental Value, then Sinners, then Train Dreams, then Marty Supreme, then Begonia, then Frankenstein, then Hamnet, then F1. Yeah, and I'll see The Secret Agent. Sometime later, maybe I'll give it a full review. Who knows? Into the top 10. Undertone. This is an A24 horror movie. This was one of their rare ones that was marketed well, widely. And I think $9 million for a film that cost about $500,000 is good. The reviews for it were, I mean, it has a cool enough title. But I heard a lot of people, it's like, with A24 horror movies, there's a whole lot of, like, something threatening to happen, scary atmosphere, and then nothing. But the plot is a paranormal podcast host becomes haunted by terrifying recordings mysteriously sent her way. Ooh, that sounds enticing for me. Masterfully using negative space, boring, and unsettling audio to build its creeping dread. Interesting. Undertone erupts as a diabolically immersive and oral nightmare. Top critic review. I was more impressed by Undertone's concept than I was entertained by its execution. This happens frequently on Rotten Tomatoes and movies in general, where it's like, have you seen this movie? It's so cool. And then you watch it, and it's the most boring application of a cool idea you have ever heard. But, you know, I'm happy for every film's success, particularly if it's original, and not Scream 7, which is number 4. Now, I like the Scream movies. I don't love them. And this one just crossed 100 million. I think it's the first movie of the year, if I'm not mistaken, to cross that threshold. If I go into yearly 2026 in-year releases, Scream 7, yes, is the first and only one to cross 100 million. Because Wuthering Heights crashed and burned at 81 million. Because it opened to like 32, 37. Wow, that was even lower than I expected. And then half. I mean, that's fine, especially for a movie that's not super well done. I mean, it was well marketed. They did everything they could. And, you know, it was a hit. So, you know, what can you say? I mean, it'll do well on streaming, I guess. Yeah, I'll watch it. But holy crow, was Saltburn really tough to get through. So, you know, we'll see. And I'm trying to think in terms of calendar grosses, if any movie recently crossed 100 million. Because we got 20 films. The Housemaid was the last one to cross 100 million. Okay, and then Marty Supreme is at 95, hasn't closed yet, but it's not getting there. Like, it's impressive that Marty Supreme was less like an awards movie and more like, you know, a commercial film. It did very well over the holidays. I mean, any movie that's marketed well at Christmas, and you had this a bit with the Iron Claw, where A24 was kind of like, didn't know what they had, and the movie ended up doing pretty well, and resonating with quite a bit of people. And so it ended up making, you know, it was in a limited release, and then when it was out of limited release, by its, like it made, like it had sneaks on Christmas Eve, and then Christmas Day it was like 10 million, and then by its first wide weekend, it made 28. Like, it's impressive. It sprinted to 50 million on its like just over 2 weeks, which is usually where they say movies make about half their money by 2 weeks in. So, anyways, yeah, It's really slumped down now. I don't know if it will make a bit more, especially since it went home empty-handed, and it'll probably stick at 95. But it is A24's highest-grossing movie ever, um, domestically at least. I don't count internationally, just because it's like there are like 70 territories, man, and like I will say, if you want to know the round figure, it is 179 million, which is again the highest-grossing worldwide. By comparison, the second highest grossing, which is Everything Everywhere All at Once. Before that, I think it's Hereditary. Um, Uncut Gems is lower because A24 only had the American rights and Netflix had it worldwide because they're in the Adam Sandler business. Um, you know, it did pretty well, but it also cost like 70 or 80 million. So did it make its money back? Maybe it broke even because it seemed like they spent a lot of money marketing it as well. But it's a net win for creatives, I think. Um, Going back to it, let's finish off this list here so I don't keep you guys longer than I need to. Scream 7. It's funny to me that people are like, well, it's not the best and it's not the worst Scream film. And it's like, well, the worst Scream film was Scream 6, and you guys loved it critically. So, you know, it's funny. Somebody pointed out it's like first wave of reviewers, quote unquote, is like people saying it's the best film ever made. Second wave of people, it's good, it's not worth the hype. And then 6 months later, oh, this movie is shit. Is basically how it goes. Scream 7, off the bat, people are like, it's not great. But it's done well. 176 worldwide. If I go to Scream 6, I think that was like 144, around there. And that was just 2 years ago. Oh, it crashed at 108 domestic. Whoa, way lower than I thought. And Scream 5. So I guess it reaped the rewards of the previous movie, which people liked and did the best at, like, because the Scream 5, which was like the reboot, kind of came back in, and it's sort of like a John Wick situation where John Wick 1 came in, was a hit on video. John Wick 2 kind of comes out, but it hasn't totally taken over yet, but people are aware of it. And then John Wick 3 is where the studio has the confidence to like market it as like an A-level product. And so, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, Scream came like just at the end of 2021 into the beginning of 2022, where Omicron strain was out, so it opened to like 30 million, and it dropped to like 60% its second weekend, but like didn't have any much competition. Like when the first one opened, it was like against Spider-Man No Way Home, and then had no, like, straight no competition until Jackass Forever, which was another Paramount movie. Speaking of which, there's another Jackass movie coming out this year, which I'm excited for because I like all of them. Yeah, but that's enough about Scream. I'm just surprised that that's like the most. I mean, if I go to Scream 1, I think that's like 96 or 106. Let me just see how the whole. Because I know its Screams are all like hovering around 100 million. So the first one, yeah, 103. But that was in 1996 money, so it's worth a lot more now. And then Scream 2 goes down to 80, right? Because it comes out so quickly. No, that also made 100. So the third one was the one that fails to make 100, and then I remember the fourth one bombs. Because, like, Scream 2 came out, yeah, 3 years later, and they didn't do much, but it still did around that, yeah, so it had 160. Scream 2 had 170, and then Scream 1, yeah, 173. So 173 is the high water mark. Yeah, and then Scream 4 bombs, which I kind of didn't get because I thought that would be a hit. I really don't get why that wasn't like huge. I still kind of don't get it. Like, I guess because the movie was kind of mediocre and didn't have a super strong release date, uh, and opened against Rio, so it had tougher competition. I think April is like a fine month to release horror, particularly around Easter weekend. Like, April is like the second best place. October is the best place in terms of month, and then the best weekend is like the very first weekend of January. But as we saw during Primate this year, and then 28 years later blows it, releases a week later, and like for whatever reason doesn't make a whole lot of money, which I saw for a second time 28 years later too. Um, and It's solid. It's a well constructed movie. It's just, yeah, it ended up suffering for the sins of its predecessor. So, yeah, it dropped 72%, and the third movie's in limbo. Um, but Moving on. The Bride. That movie came out. It's Warner Brothers' first bomb since a year ago, so they had a good, nice year-long run. They tried to market the hell out of it, and Jessie Buckley did win Best Actress, yeah, that movie's probably, um, people didn't like it that much. If I go and look for it, I mean, people did say that it had good ideas, um, but yeah, it's 57%, so it's like mixed. The Rotten Tomatoes consensus said, concocted with all the restraint of a mad scientist's experiment, the bride lurches in so many different creative directions that the overall effect is both sloppy and inspired. And the audience said it unapologetically walks down the bloody aisle with style and verve, sparking mixed reactions. Some question its unity. I mean, that's an AI kind of summary, while many more wholeheartedly say I do without a prenup. Okay, yeah, whatever, lame. Um, Moving on down the lane. Yeah, Weathering. Kiki's Delivery Service. This is a movie I kind of want to see. I mean, I've always wanted to see it. Because it's, those Studio Ghibli films. Um, oh, Kirsten Dunst was one of the voices in it. I never knew that. This isn't one of the Miyazaki. It is one of Miyazaki's. I wondered if it was, um, like a Ghibli one that Miyazaki didn't do. But yeah, cool. Uh, maybe I'll watch it. Maybe I'll make time to watch it this week if I can. Wuthering Heights, I already spoke about. Crashed and Burned, but they marketed it well. For whatever reason, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2: Secret of the Ooze got like re-released, and because of that, it crossed $80 million, which is funny, just because it's like ended at 78 million worldwide in 1991, and 30 odd years later, somebody's like, we gotta correct it, and it opened well at the time. It's just it was a sequel where back then they cut corners on it because they wanted to increase their profit margins, and instead of investing, they just cut bait weirdly. I'll never understand 90s movies executives. It's like, I guess because it's sort of flipped now, where movie going is like super important, so they emphasize it to, as a window into like other, you know, Ryan Reynolds has his whiskey and stuff like that, and uses it to makes movies to promote his whiskey, but it's like film is like the main thing he does, Amazon, obviously shopping is their biggest business, but like they'll put out a Mark Wahlberg movie like Play Dirty, and then have a car commercial in the middle of it to sell cars. Back then in like the 90s, it was like the other way around, where like the movies were kind of niche, and so they'd have product placement, but it was like the product coming into the movies world. Now the movie is built around coming into the products world. It's weird. There's probably a bigger paper that somebody could write on it sounding smart, but I won't bother. Now, 10 is a movie I saw in its fifth week, Crime 101. This movie could have been a masterpiece. It could have been this generation's heat. The problem is it ends super anticlimactically, and it makes the like 2.5 hours you spent feel kind of like wasted time. But you know, I liked it. I thought it was like okay. But yeah, I'm annoyed with all the pieces it had that it wasn't better. But with a title like Crime 101, it sort of explains itself. It's 88% on Rotten Tomatoes, 85% popcorn meter. It said it studied the greats of LA Noir closely, shows its homework with sleek action set pieces and vivid characterization, receiving top marks and graduating near the top of its class. But again, it all leads to kind of nothing. Audience says it's a heist movie with heart. Yeah, whatever. Like, it's made by Amazon, which is the reason I didn't see it in theaters, because it's going to be, you know, on in a few weeks, and voila. Um, it's an engaging thriller lifted by revelatory turns from its finely tuned ensemble cast. Nobody here is doing revelatory work. Everybody here is doing like good work you expect Chris Hemsworth or Mark Ruffalo or Barry Keoghan and Halle Berry to do. Um, Chris Hemsworth has a pretty good track record. This, Furiosa, um, the Extraction movies, where it's like movies that could have been bad but weren't. And worth noting of the movies coming out, Project Hail Mary, visually dazzling space odyssey that's carried along effortlessly by the gravitational pull of Gosling as most winning. Project Hail Mary is a near miraculous fusion of smarts and heart. Well, good to know. And in terms of Metacritic, let me get there and see what they say there. Because, after this, I'm going to get into. And the Madison is mixed reviews. That's the bummer. I was looking forward to that. Marathon, mixed reviews. I was looking forward to that. 78. Not that bad. How'd The Martian do? By the way, Resident Evil 9 critical acclaim, 89. So does it beat? Yeah, The Martian is at 80. So it's a tiny hair step below The Martian, but I'll take it. So Resident Evil Requiem. I want to play it. I do not have the capacity to do so, although I did see a PS5 on sale. And yeah, bummer. And by the way, there's nothing worth mentioning in the the rest of the box office. So moving on there, because we're also at an hour. Although I don't care about length, I just figured I'd mention it. Getting into my diary, and again here I will go all the way back to when my last episode was, which was on the 2nd. So I have a bit to get through, but I'll get through it. So, Clue. I didn't see this earlier because it's a terrible title. I've had it rented from the library forever. But yeah, I thought the title was like a misspelling of flute, but now it's a terrible title for a different reason, and that it's not even John Clute, the title detective's story. It's about Jane Fonda, who's a call girl who is intercepted by Donald Sutherland, who says, "Help me catch or find a missing person." That people are, turning up dead. It's a murder mystery movie, plain and simple. But it's not John Clute's story. But man, it is shot by Gordon Willis, the same guy who shot The Godfather. And that bedroom mirror shot, there's a scene in it where Donald Sutherland is with Jane Fonda, and he realizes they're being watched. So he takes her, and it's shot from sort of the killer's point of view, overhead, and then switches to a shot with Sutherland and Fonda, and Jane Fonda is a call girl, and she's trying to seduce Donald Sutherland to have control over him. And he leads her over to like a mirror onto the bed, and she's like, "Oh, I got him," and she puts her hands around him, and has the back of her dress unzipped, and then he puts his hands around her and sits her down, and she's like, "Oh, I got him," and then he's like, there's somebody on the roof. And then she, like, you see her hands, like, in the reflection in the mirror, like, change, shape and how that responds. And then he walks away, and it's still, the camera lingers on the mirror. And then as he exits the shot, because it's just his back reflection, you see her with her hands in her head. And it's just a very cool, unique shot. Mirrors are always like a great tool trick to use for cameras, but yeah, nobody does it better than Gordon Willis, the Prince of Darkness. Um, I hate that because it's like I hate the Prince of Darkness as a title, but it's like the guy is known for, and I had studied him in film school, um, using a low light to help tell the story. Um, Funny enough, he's also credited as a film director, but yeah, he was in the 7 year period up to 1997. Willis was the director of photography on 6 films that received among them 39 Academy Award nominations, and those movies won 19 times, including 3 of them for Best Picture. Um, the fact that Willis did not receive a single nomination was the subject of some controversy. His frequent absence from this period's nominees has been ascribed both to his unhidden antipathy for Hollywood and his work being ahead of its time. He was once quoted as saying of Hollywood, "I don't think it suffers from an overabundance of good taste." Willis was later nominated twice, once for his recreation of 1920 photography in Woody Allen's Zelig, and then for Godfather Part 3. In 2009, at the inaugural Governors Awards, the Academy chose Willis as the recipient of the American Academy Honorary Award. Willis directed one film of his own, Windows, in 1980. He admitted the film had been a mistake, later said that he didn't really like directing. "I've had a good relationship with actors, but I can do what I do and back off. I don't want that much romancing. I don't want them to call me up at 2 in the morning saying I don't know who I am." He was nominated for a Golden Raspberry for Worst Director 1 year after the film's release. His last film was The Devil's Own, which was directed by Pakula, who also directed Flute, and he said of his decision to retire, he said, "I got tired of trying to get actors out of trailers and standing in the rain." Uh, Anyways, yeah, so just to let you know, this cinematographer, he did Clute, and he followed that up with The Godfather. And then he did The Paper Chase, and then he did The Parallax View, and then Godfather Part 2, and then he did All the President's Men, and then he did Annie Hall, and then he shot Manhattan, and the Windows movie that he was nominated for, and then he did, a bunch of work with Woody Allen, you know, um, Purple Rose of Cairo, and then he did The Pickup Artist, and then Presumed Innocent, Godfather 3, um, Malice, which is the Alec Baldwin, Nicole Kidman movie that Aaron Sorkin and Scott Frank wrote. That's one that people talk about where Alec Baldwin has this monologue where, he's a surgeon and he goes, "I am God," that people always talk about as being cool. And then The Devil's Own, which is okay. Um, it's fine. People kind of don't like it because it got mixed reviews. It like bounces between 2 separate films and doesn't know where it goes. But anyways, that's enough review of Pakula. Um, Getting back into the diary aspect of it, um, the mirror shot is a all timer, and it's well acted with a good amount of suspense. The final third doesn't hold up like the rest, but it's still enjoyable and skillfully made. Yeah, Clute from 1971. It was written by brothers, Andy and Dave Lewis. It was inspired by one of the writers had read a serial, like a comic book as a child about a man attempting to solve his brother's murder in a city. And yeah, they shot in 70 and 71 New York City, which is just so dangerous and stuff like that. I'll talk a bit more about this in the Al Pacino movie I saw, Cruising, right before. But yeah, it was a critical and commercial success. Screenplay and direction were lauded. Fonda's performance received critical acclaim. She kind of thought she was miscast because she went, as actors do, research with other call girls, and like she was never picked to be a call girl and stuff. I think people just kind of figured either Jane Fonda, who was just like Barbarella and stuff, was like too good to be true or something like that, but or too prim and proper, or too much of like a regular person or something. Who knows? But anyway, she obviously ended up winning best actress for it, which is cool. And yeah, the movie made like 5 times its budget. Well, because it's 2.5 million as and made 12. Now I gotta do the math because I'm bothering myself. If I do, um, yeah, 12 divided by 2.5, it made 4.8 times its budget. There you go, math heads. Yeah. Um, would I recommend the movie? Sure, has some cool stuff in it if you got the time. That's as far as I'll go on that. Then I wish I could see more of this. And then, I saw If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You with Rose Byrne was nominated for. I wrote more anti-child misery porn from the global leftist elite. This is like a sore spot that I have of I saw Knocked Up as a kid and thought was cool and funny. Um, but I honestly think this is like a controversial opinion of mine that a movie like that like hit hard kind of like brainwashed my generation into thinking like, oh my gosh, having kids is a nightmare. And there were like, Life as We Know It and whatnot of basically like movies where somebody's life is going a certain way. Baby Boom is another, Raising Helen is another. There are multiple movies with this exact same plot. And it's like somebody's life is going great, and then they have kids, and their awesome life stops, and then their life sucks. And then the moral of the story is they realize it's better to have like a sucky life as a poor person, like the family man, than to like have a career. And like the rest of us are still chasing that like Canadian dream of like, well, I still want to be rich and like successful, so I'll get a kid when I can friggin' afford it. No more poverty porn for me. So all of these movies where it's like, oh, this is how much it sucks to raise a kid, but it's worth it, are like so not my bag. Um, Rose Byrne is good in this movie. She probably, you know, in my opinion, gives a better performance than Jessie Buckley does, which is like not overacting, but a lot of acting. It's volume. But like, yeah, the movie If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You sucks so much that like I don't care. It it's not a fun movie to me. I don't know why anybody would want to make it. Um, so yeah, um, I don't really even want to discuss it further. So I'm gonna move on to cruising. Um, so I gave this movie 3 stars. I watched it in 2 parts, two 45-minute installments, and the ending to it isn't supported by anything the director does. It's like Pacino is in a different film. William Friedkin directed this. At the same time, Pacino is very good. 1980 New York is the most foreboding, grimy place, like I said about Clute. It's a very grimy and violent film. Fascinating despite its many weak points, which is partly its pacing, despite its relatively short length. Um, it is basically it's 102 minutes long, which is nice. And yeah, it's just basically about New York is caught up in the grip of a serial killer who preys on the gay community. And the victims all look like Al Pacino. So Al Pacino goes on undercover as like a gay cop or whatever, or as a gay guy who's not a cop, to try and infiltrate the S&M subculture of the gay male community to lure this killer out of the shadows. So it's very interesting subject matter. Um, Goes to show movies can get a lot of mileage out of just filming in an interesting location. Um, I enjoyed it for what it was. As for uh, Friedkin, I don't think I've ranked his movies because I haven't seen enough. Um, Let me see here. No, I'm not gonna I'll get into this later. But yeah, I give it 3 stars. Um, and yeah, uh, worth watching, interesting. I did think about it afterwards, going back more of the Bone Temple. I gave it the first time 2.5 stars. This time I added half a star because the film has it's has good pacing construction. Like it's not that long. It's 109 minutes. It doesn't really waste any time. I'm annoyed because it doesn't go on the same character journey that Spike did in the first movie. Um, it's different. It's a lot more conventional. There's some gnarly stuff to it. Um, but yeah, it's sort of like the Last Jedi of it. Of like brings its own flavor. It has its own identity. But let's get on with it. I hope that there's a third movie because Killian Murphy shows up at the end, and like promises something awesome. Uh, anyways, Cold Storage. This is a movie written by David Koepp, adapted from his novel, and I wrote Georgina Campbell's eyebrow raise can move mountains. Um, yeah, um, this is a movie with Joe Carey as well and Liam Neeson. Georgina Campbell is from Barbarian. She also looks a lot like a young Halle Berry. So she's very, very beautiful. There's a scene where it's like, oh, they find a creepy tunnel leading to an underground bunker. Do we go down it? Conventional movie logic says no. Horror logic says yes. This is a sci-fi movie. And Joe Carey is like, I'm not going down there. And then Georgina Campbell gives that eyebrow raise, and it's like, yeah, I think I would. I think I would for her. And so, it's an entertaining, well plotted movie. It's just a fun B movie. I give it 3.5 stars. It's worth watching for sure. But, I like genre movies. If you like sci fi, if you like, horror kind of thing, it's worth watching. Then I watched before that Is This Thing On? It was not on. This is a movie that Bradley Cooper directs or misdirects, to the point where it's a punchline at the Oscars this year, with Will Arnett being in it. It's a movie about a divorced dad, who decides to get into stand-up comedy, and it's directed by a divorced dad who seems to think that he is sort of in the right and his marriage can be repaired, and he's just in the wrong. And that's just how wrong-headed this movie is. The divorce that they do is pretty amicable, and there's one good scene with Kieran Hines where Will Arnett does his act and then comes out of the comedy club after being like upset and angry. He does a bad version of his act, and it's the one act that his father sees. And it's like moving because Kieran Hines is so good. Um, but yeah, um, 1 star out of 5. This movie was like surprising to me because A Star Is Born was great, and then Maestro was like interesting, and then this was kind of gonna be a light on its feet type, 90-minute movie, and it just it ends up being 2 hours for one. It's not that funny, it's not that dramatic, and doesn't really have any insights to say. It's just wrong-headed in all directions. So, yeah, Crime 101, and I gave 3 stars. I wrote sturdy but completely underwhelming with a bad message, um, which is to say that like it's okay to commit crimes if you're a good guy, which I've gotten so tired of these last 10 years because, you know, the only thing that separates good guys from bad guys is your principles. So, you know, if I were to write a movie where it's like, the antagonist has the chance to stop the protagonist and decides not to out of some mutual respect or something, it's like, no, I'm going to have them do that. And a movie that followed in the footsteps of Heat, similar to Crime 101, that took that route was Den of Thieves 2. Had they followed through on that, it would have been a really strong bookend film with a really satisfying ending. But yeah, totally undeserving of its runtime, underwhelming climax, where the characters don't behave in a manner that suits them. It like ends in a hotel room, and like you can make that work if that's like into your plot about like the best laid plans, you know, ending up leading you nowhere or something, but they didn't pull it off there. Marty Supreme, 3.5 stars, a 3-star film with an extra half star for the sets, costumes, and cinematography. It's a nonsense plot with an underwhelming ending, morally rancid and meandering. Um, then It Happened One Night. This is an Oscar-winning film, and it's nice when a movie lives up to the hype. This won Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Director, and Best Screenplay. It's one of 3 films to win that, the other 2 being One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and the other being Silence of the Lambs. It deserves it. It's just basically about, a starry heiress who runs off hidden and gets discovered by a journalist, and they just spend the night together. Or another night, riding the bus and bonding. And it's a rom com, but it's done so early that it's like earnestly where you're like, oh, this is set in the blueprint. And then there's one other thing that like kicks the movie up a notch from like 3 stars to 4 stars. The greatest on screen father of the 20th century, maybe. The man is the reason the whole movie works. A lot of times, what makes a movie is when you have a uh, tangential, tertiary character who's not the center focus of the film. They come into it, they like in real time fix the plot, and they don't like have a lot to go on. Maybe they don't have a lot of personality or something, but they're either super well acted or the tone of the film is just right that it like fits into place. The father in this movie is the whole reason the movie works. I heard that Clark Gable, who I previously saw in The Misfits, Run Silent, Run Deep, and of course Gone with the Wind, here he is before all of that, but he's miscast. It's nice to see, a big movie star be a movie star, though, because he is likable. Heck of a film that pioneered the rom-com. But yeah, Clark Gable is a guy who's like, you believe as a newspaper baron, not like a scrappy news reporter. But uh, that this kind of dynamic was done well, better in William Wyler's Roman Holiday, but I'll take Frank Capra doing it for sure, because it's flightier. I relate to Gable leaving in the middle of the night, typing up a 10-page story, and then heading back before the girl wakes up. The only way that that's possible is if it's a heck of a story, and it is. I miss the fake care movies had for print journalism, which is to say, like, he gets paid well. He shows up, there's a lot of people on type. Um, they argue front and back. Man, I wish I could have worked in a movie that had that, because in a way, I'm doing journalism myself here. And it's just not working out. Maybe I should start charging for it. That's another thing. I got an offer too, I'm not sure if they're AI centered, from people who want me to review their films. And I'll say, okay, but I'm going to say, okay, pay me first to be on the podcast, because, I got to pay the rent. And I got to start charging for my skills. Got to make a living. That's what I got to do. Because my current job isn't working out too well and is causing me physical pain that I'm reminded of every day. I don't want to get into that, and I don't want to get into the other politics of why I'm at home, which involve small town politics and being eaten up by big corporations down the street. But let's go to the movies. Let's go back to the movies here. It Happened One Night gets 4 stars, though. Begonia. Now, here's an interesting thing. I see It Happened One Night on March 9th. I see Begonia on February 26th, which meant that for what feels like the longest time, I went 11 days without watching one movie. That's got to be like a record in a long time. Begonia, the Best Picture nominee. It bugged me a bit, but well done, even if it's slight. There's not much to it. Amazing musical score by Jerska and Fendrix. And, Emma Stone is good. Jesse Plemons is good. Emma Stone is very good, but The problem is the screenplay of the movie by Will Tracy is not that super impressive. I imagine the original is probably better. It's just somebody picked this out of a hat to do. The filmmakers could have done anything. Um, then uh, I think Begonia is probably the last one. If I go to the list, oh, it's February 2nd was my last one. Oh boy. I like movies. This movie was one full week before. Now, my next gig that I'm going to get is on the 20th. I'm going to review Chandler Levesque, the director of I Like Movies, her next film. The annoying thing is I could have seen it in my hometown here, but I wasn't there. So I have to go back up to Ottawa to see it. At least I get to see it again ahead of when it opens in mid-April. So I Like Movies is about a guy who likes movies and wants to be a filmmaker. He's from Burlington, ends up moving to Ottawa, hit very close to home for me. It kind of makes you hate movies in a way. Um, I relate to this movie as someone from Ontario, went to University of Ottawa, and got a film degree as well. But two things happen at the end. He get a spoiler for I Like Movies, but you'll probably forget by the time you watch it. He gets put in a dorm room, which I never was. I missed that. They didn't have enough room for me. And he listens and turns the conversation to something other than movies, which, given the opportunity, I would find hard to do. Although I've actually done it like many, many times before, and I'm a much better listener and much less of an ass than this main character. But it feels so authentic to point out what seem like inconsistencies in the timeline, and then find out that A Crazy Nights and Punch Drunk Love were in theaters at the same time. It tells a simple story well. If somebody made it out of Ottawa with a film degree and made a movie this decent, then maybe there's hope for me. 3.5 stars out of 5. I'm going to review the director's next film, Mylan Kicks, at the Ottawa Film Festival, and publish that to Rotten Tomatoes for Flickster, so look forward to seeing that. That'll be on the 20th, so 4 days from now. The 16th is A Different Man. This is when I was home last, and I write in my 4-star review, the movie where you ask somebody who doesn't watch as many movies as you do what they thought of it because they saw it before you did, and they say, it was different. Yeah, this is a good, well done, well thought out movie. It's a movie. Like, it's a movie where you see it's like something that's unrealistic but interesting, and it's worth watching. It's about a man who is disfigured, signs up for a procedure which changes him into a handsome man, and watches as somebody new comes along with sort of the same condition, sort of take over the life that he had, and it's kind of weirdly displaced. It's really well done. It's just kind of like a street drama. And then you have, on the 13th, The Rip, a movie I was really looking forward to. And I just write, imagine how much harder this movie would have gone if at the end of it, it turned out that the corruption was instead from Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, as opposed to, spoiler alert, because the movie's been out for months, Glenn from The Walking Dead and Coach Taylor from Friday Night Lights. This whole operation in the movie is a setup to catch who killed Affleck's cop girlfriend, and it turns out Mike, a single dude with a lot less motivation to do it than any of the central characters, and Maddie, who's like a DEA agent. The movie hasn't built up these two characters who are the ultimate villains at all, so the corruption isn't with the police sergeant who was passed over for a promotion and whose girlfriend died, or the lieutenant with a cancer victim's son, divorced wife, and piles of medical debt. No, those Miami-Dade cops who make $80 grand a year have too much integrity. No, it's an outside force. There's a cool part where Affleck, Damon, Yoon, and Chandler are all sitting in an armored black vehicle with their weapons drawn, and it's clear that this is where the writers thought up to. Then there's a cliche shootout and the movie ends. It tries to do the same thing as Narc, Joe Carnahan's previous film before Smoking Aces, without being able to lean on Ray Liotta to play that noirish feel. And Affleck and Damon are two well-liked actors in their community who are industry pillars for a broken institution that is Hollywood, that the movie doesn't have the guts to weaponize their likability and trust signifies the actor's willingness to waste their talent on a Netflix film for enough cash. No residuals, no physical release, no theatrical, no back end, no footprint. The movie's a metaphor for Netflix, with the only knowledge these main characters know in all their years is that taking dirty money shouldn't be worth it. Yet still, some indulge. Um, yeah, I gave it 2.5 stars. Really wanted to like it. The next one is a half-star review from a movie I finally saw that Affleck and Damon produced. And yeah, it's just from Project Greenlight. It's the resulting film. And I just find it funny that the director thought that this script was better than what they originally had. This is just a movie that's like a waste of time, and I won't even bother explaining it, except it's like a class comedy about, I guess, a British guy and his semi um, stunted brother who like infiltrate a class of like a political family, and like it's like a comedy of manners or errors or something. It's not that funny, and it's kind of like underclass sexist. Um, but like, who cares? Because it's boring. It's an HBO original film that's kind of like unbearable to watch. But that's all I'll say about that. The Leisure Class, The Running Man. I watched on February the 4th, and this is the last one. Um, it's apt that The Running Man is the first movie I've seen entirely on my phone. Um, Having been too exhausted uh, um, running around uh, with my day-to-day responsibilities to make it to the theater um, to see this film or rent it on the day it came out. I even got a brand new TV 25 feet away, but I was too lazy or cold to sit down and watch. Over 2 sittings, it held my attention. Glenn Powell, by all accounts, is a nice guy, and his stunt cast as Ben Richards, a man who embodies the boiling rage of the working class, tired of being crushed under the boot of the ruling class. Impatient and wanting to move his family out of the slums, he signs up for the deadly game show, The Running Man, where he must survive for 30 days while being hunted, and if he wins, he'll receive $1 billion. The issue with this setup is that, having starred in a $1 billion grossing movie in his breakthrough role, and following it up with playing the love interest of Sydney Sweeney, Powell has a little to be mad about. He's just too nice a guy, doing as well as can be expected despite his miscast. But there's a bigger problem with this film, the network. The network is run by Dan Killian, who's mostly seen throughout the film behind a screen. What's most alarming about his evil is his indifference. He could not care less about how Powell, as Ben Richards, thinks of him or the network. He doesn't blink to offer up the lives of one of his employees, no matter how competent or loyal, for Richards to kill, as long as the ratings remain high. Because of this cold simplicity, it doesn't make him as compelling a villain as Rowan is capable of, and his inevitable downfall happens so late in the game that, occurring off screen, it plays like a literal afterthought with slow motion, sparkly style standing in for substance. In the 8 months between the filming of this movie and its eventual release, the Paramount Global Network was acquired by Skydance Media. Skydance is run by David Ellison, the son of the richest man in the world, or formally, depending on the day. There's a tendency to think that the filmmakers, upon being given $110 million, resisted biting the hand that feeds them, which is a shame because King's material has teeth. The film's light tone is more in line with Edgar Wright's early work rather than the dark places he ambitiously ventured with his previous film Last Night in Soho. What The Running Man wrestles with is the tension between having Richards get through the show while questioning his willingness to participate at every turn. Director Edgar Wright tailors himself to the material in several ways. He keeps the film's momentum going without exhausting the audience, a feat that he has pulled off many times before. He is successfully able to efficiently set up a fully realized world and crucially does so without having the weight of morality weigh down on the audience. The dystopian sets are brightly lit and purposefully artificial. Perfectly embodying this delivery of tone is Coleman Domingo as Running Man host Bobby T, who gives the film's best performance. He's vicious, playful, and energetic, ready to pivot both physically and literally at a moment's notice. Only few of the other performances were as finely tuned. The last few other performers are as good as two-time Oscar nominee Coleman Domingo, who I mentioned earlier. With all its energy and momentum, The Running Man's final punch lacks impact. These are bleak times and the film's sale is past the bleak ending of the book. It offers up a very pat YouTube-style recap, and although the style is previously set up in a world by an established character, the denouement is a creative cop-out after all the hard work the film has done to get there. For a ride as smooth as this one, even if it adds up on paper, a short drop in a sudden stop isn't what this film deserves. It's a stopgap film where everyone involved will go on to bigger and better things. But given the professionalism at work, the network should have had more faith in the filmmakers. Alas, that's show business. Sometimes a good show gets yanked off the air. 7.2 out of 10. So, yeah, that's my Letterboxd Diary. And then just to finish up, I want to say in terms of gaming, I do have Dead Space 2. I did open up my PS3, and I will play the DLC. In my 4 days, I'm going to review the movie, and then I have at work drama where it's just I got injured at work last month. No, I got injured at work on December 20th, and I'm just still hurting from it. And, I have to fill out the paperwork, and I haven't been asked back yet because the paperwork isn't finished. It has to be sent out, reevaluated, that kind of thing, and I'm waiting my final reevaluation after finishing physio, and, it's a whole thing. So, yeah, we'll see how it all goes. In the meantime, I'm also volunteering for politics, which is fun. But yeah, that's for another podcast. In the meantime, thank you for listening. And when I come back on this next podcast episode, which I'm not sure will be when, I'll try and do one more because, 66, this has been more than a month between podcast episodes, I'm aware. But I have a good number right now. It's at 65. Maybe I'll renumber them and find a more accurate tally, but I'll try and do one more. And with that, I'll probably have a new podcast setup and new podcast format, maybe interviewing people more, which I did with that Kyle fellow. And yeah, after I have that, I'll maybe get paid to do it or something, release clips back to them, promote their film, let them have it on their, the rights to it, and publish it on their, various social media platforms, menus, stuff they did. Be cool. But yeah, we'll see where it goes a week from now. Until then, thanks for listening to my coverage of the 98th Annual Academy Awards, the box office for March 13th to the 15th weekend, and the very small, at the moment, gaming aspect of it. Take care and have a good night.